Hi everyone, Shannon Bruins here with Bruins Realty Group and Keller Williams. I am here with Pam Caldwell. I'm super excited to bring her to you. As promised, we wanted to have some talks about lending and kind of what's happening, Pam, in the market. I mean, tell us a little bit about you and your company too, but then we'll talk about the market.
Okay, great. My name's Pam Caldwell. I'm with Certainty Home Loans, and we've been in the business about 20 years, me personally, and I have a team that is fully operational. We've been together for over 10 years. So we do have a system in place, and that's super important in this market to make sure that we close on schedule.
Very important to have
and you have
the
experts,
systems, right?
Right.
So obviously 2021 was kind of just fast and furious. That's what we were doing. We were going as fast and as hard as we could. Rates at that point were still great, like almost felt like free money. Now here we are, it's 2022. I mean, I'm dating this, but I think it's good for people to understand it's the end of 2022. Beginning of 2022 was still, the rates were low.
That's
So
correct.
kind of like I know what I saw happen, but what did you see happen as the rates changed and evolved as this year went on, right?
So lending got creative, and that's to help people still have good buying power, because when the rates go up, your debt to income ratios will go up, and so sometimes your purchase power goes down. So a key thing to have in place would be to have a expert mortgage lender that's watching your particular situation, your finances when you're speaking to them, because they'll want to update your approval, make sure you know when you're out looking for the home that you can afford it. The one thing about the rates, historically, they're still very low. I came back from the time many years ago when my parents said the rates were like 21%.
Right.
And when I bought my first home, the rates had dropped to 10%. So
And that felt great, right?
It felt great. But now that you've been teased with these super low rates, people want those. But we do have avenues for you. There's protection if you're building a home for new construction.
Well, yeah, let's talk specifically. So like we've been seeing rates at 6.5% to 7% right now.
That's correct.
Right? Okay. Which isn't, I know it's scary and it changed kind of how people could buy, right? So at 3.5%, you could afford, let's say, a $400,000 house. At, 6.5%, probably can't afford that $400,000 house, right?
Probably it's going to cut it off about $100,000.
Okay. So that's going to pull you down to $300,000 house. Now that's okay, right? Like people want to buy within what they want their monthly payment to be, right?
Correct.
So I know when you and I were talking at first, and we can talk a little bit about new construction, we were talking about some of these new construction folks, they didn't lock actually, and they were approved at like 3.5%. And then it went up and then they couldn't purchase, right?
That's correct.
So
unfortunately,
that's one of the great things I wanted you to tell them about your program that we were doing for some of our new construction buyers right now.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. I don't know of anyone else that has this product this way. We can lock out to 1 year.
Awesome.
You pay a fee up front on your credit card, but that fee is fully refunded at closing. And when you get ready to close, once you have a firm closing date and you're within 30 days of closing, if the rates have dropped, we will renegotiate your rate down. So you do have the opportunity to go to the lowest rate possible at the time of closing. And also, what's great about that low rate, once you've locked that in, you know your rate's not going to go up any higher while they're building. You're not stressing out of it.
Yes.
That's what most people do during the build process. If they're floating their loan rate, they're very concerned. They're very stressed. So I try to put them at ease. They love that. So all the clients that listened and locked in are loving me that are closing at 4.5% right now.
They are.
So they're excited
really
about
happy.
that. The ones that didn't lock, some fell out of qualification. We came up with some creative ideas. We did some seller paid 2-1 buy downs, which are a phenomenal option.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, because we're going on appointments, we're talking to buyers, they're going, hey, I want to sell because I know I'm kind of at the end of this high market, but maybe I won't buy yet because the rates are scaring me. So tell me more about that, because these buyers are really interested in what can we do to have a lower rate. Or really just a better payment is what they're looking for, right?
Exactly. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can permanently buy down your rate. So for example, if the rate is 7%, you could use points. I know
Okay.
people have heard of that. And they're a percentage of your loan amount. So depending on how many points you can afford to buy down, you can buy down your rate incrementally. The one thing that people want to know about points is they are tax deductible. So you want to probably speak
that's
to your
important.
accountant about that, check
Okay.
into that. So if you are investing in that, you'll also want to ask your lender what would be your rate of return. So if you did buy down your
Okay.
rate and you plan on being in the house a long time, your rate of return probably is around the year 3, year 4.
Okay.
So if you're not going to be in the house long, it may not be important to buy down your rate, even though your payment's a little higher than anticipated. That's one option. Also, sellers can get creative as well. They can offer to buy down your rate. We have a program called Seller Paid 2-1 Buy Down, and it's a
What does that mean? Like the 2-1? How does
Perfect.
that-
Yeah. So for example, say your rate's 7% to make the math easy.
Okay.
The first year your payment would be at 5% interest
Okay.
rate for an
It's a
entire
big
year.
difference.
That money that the seller put in escrow for you as part of the contract would be used to make up the difference between the 5% and the 7%.
Okay. Okay.
And then year 2, you'd have the same option, 6%. It would go up 1 point.
Goes up 1 point. Okay.
So say, for example, you get in a seller paid 2-1 buy down, but the rates drop.
Uh-huh.
And you don't want to stay at 6%. You'd like to enjoy, maybe the rates are at 4.5. You don't give up that money. It sits in an escrow account, and we actually will pay down the principal of your loan that you currently have with that extra money. So you
Oh.
don't ever lose that money.
So,
So it's still beneficial if the rates drop for you to refinance at that time as well.
okay, and you still have that money that
That's
can go
correct.
towards your
If they
principal.
don't, though, your rate will go up at year 3 to the 7%,
Okay.
and you would enjoy that for the 30 years. But if the rates do ever drop, you're welcome to refinance. There's no prepayment penalty.
Great. Yeah, that's really
That
good.
makes sense?
I think it does
Okay.
make sense. I mean, and there may be questions that come up along the way,
Yeah.
which is great. Like we'll answer those as we go. Yet I don't think people have thought about these creative ways in a
Yes.
really long time. Like they've been.
That's why they need
Oh,
you.
Yeah,
and me.
exactly. Because
We sit with pen to paper coming up with these ideas
Exactly.
and working on
And I
ways
do
to make
love
it
some
work
math.
for you.
I
Yes.
love math. So I'm like, okay, let's figure out like
Yeah,
what we
are
can
very
do
good at that.
to get this done. And they do appreciate that because that makes a difference. I
Oh,
mean,
it really does.
we were just doing it last night with a client because they were thinking they were going to rent. And they're like, maybe we don't need to, right?
Well, rent is not exactly inexpensive anymore either.
No, and that was the
So-
whole thought.
That's a huge, even though the rates are a little
Mhm.
higher, it's still less expensive.
Then rent. It
Than
has
rent.
definitely gone.
And as the rate of rent goes up each year, and if you purchased versus renting,
Mm-hmm.
you've saved some equity right there versus paying the landlord.
Right.
And you can use that equity later to
I
buy another
agree.
home
I agree.
or retire with, whatever
Or
you
even,
decide to
yeah,
use it.
anything you want to do to the house because it's yours,
Yes,
right? So that's
exactly.
nice. So okay, so they're thinking about this. They could get it from the seller, like they could
Okay.
get some kind of a buy down from the seller, right?
Mhm.
As a buyer, or they could pay for it themselves.
Correct.
We don't know exactly what that cost is. It's all dependent on the loan, right?
It does. There's different costs for different loan products, and it's usually
Okay.
based on your rate and the loan amount that you're borrowing. And that's
Okay.
how they determine points.
Okay, that's good. So
So we would sit down with pen and paper and tell you
Every
exactly
time.
how it applies to you
Okay.
personally.
Okay, and then once they look at that, and this is my always my question for them too is, how long do you really think you're gonna have the
Right.
loan? Rarely does anybody have their loan for 30 years.
Correct.
It doesn't happen.
That's a good point. So that's what I always, the new slogan now, I know you've probably seen it out there in the social media.
I think I know what you're gonna say.
You date your mortgage and you marry your home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the mortgage can change, and you can change it by refinancing, or
Right.
You
but
know,
just then you can
buying the
still
rate
love
down.
the home that you're
but
in.
you can
and-
love the home you're in
Yes,
forever
and
if you
enjoy
want.
that.
Yes.
Well, what do you see, Pam, moving forward? Because we saw this kind of happening. We know it's you and I know. I think because of the Fed, they wanted to stop inflation. That's how our rates have gone up to an extent. what do you see happening as we move forward? Because people always ask me that, and I know we have no crystal ball,
Yeah.
right? Yet they always say, Shannon, are the rates going to go down next year? Are they going to go up? What's going to happen? And so I'm not asking you to get your crystal ball out, just more like, what do you feel like from your 20 years of experience, like what's happening, what's going to go on?
That's a good question. So what I've heard, the chatter is in the market, is that the government is trying to slow down, inflation, and they do that by raising the interest rates. And people say, well, how does that make any sense?
Right.
What that's for is to get other people to buy the mortgage-backed securities. So they're not really raising the interest rate on your mortgage. They're raising the money that will create people wanting to buy the mortgages so we can sell them and then we can lend the money.
Because they'll make more from buying it in the
Right,
back end.
exactly.
Right?
They're not going to be buying these mortgage-backed securities if the rates are at 3% when inflation's high. So
Right.
the whole puzzle, the part that we don't understand is this is global right now. It's not just our country. And we're actually doing fairly well compared to a lot of other countries.
Yes.
And I see us slowly slowing down the inflation rate right now.
Uh-huh.
I see that the interest rate creeping up slower. They
Than it
just
was.
raised it 75 basis points, but then they were going to raise it 50 more basis points in December. But now they're thinking maybe quarter.
So they're kind of backing down.
They're
as
backing
watching
down a little
what's
bit. They're
happening.
watching what's happening. We see a little bit more growth here.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to the professional realtors that are getting out there, and people are getting their homes on the market again
Mm-hmm.
and selling, and people are out still looking and buying. Everyone still buys a home. Whether you think it's slowed down a lot, there's still people buying homes.
Oh, and I'll tell you what we've seen is the people that are out there are much more serious.
They're much more
not
serious. So
just
if you are
looking
thinking about
around,
selling,
or they're
now is a
very
great
serious.
time because
Mhm.
there's not a huge inventory.
Yeah.
So when people that are out
Yeah.
there now are very serious about purchasing, it's a perfect time to list your home.
Yeah, there's not a lot of competition.
Correct.
And the people that are looking are serious. So to me, it's kind of a perfect storm as long as people can look past their fear,
That's correct.
right?
Yes.
And that's why we're here, right? We want to educate them.
yes, absolutely.
To help them understand what's really going on,
Yeah.
so they're not as fearful.
Yes. And like I said before, it can change, your loan can. So
Mhm.
if you
Yes.
found that home you absolutely love, we can figure a creative way to get it financed for you, make you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
in a couple of years when the rates do calm down, which they say they will be in another refi boom in a couple of years.
Okay.
So it'll be temporary.
It always is.
Yes.
It always is very
Historically,
cyclical,
if you
right?
just look back at history.
7 to 10
yes.
years, here we go, right?
There we go,
Like-
exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
We've been in it
absolutely.
long enough, right?
Yes, I have 20 years myself.
That's
so
right.
That's
There you
the amount of
go.
time. Well, Pam, I'm so happy you could come and
Thank
be
you
with us
for
today.
inviting me.
Yeah, it really helps, and I think just getting the word out to people so
Yeah.
we can educate them and kind of put this out there for people to know, it all helps. So
Yes,
yeah.
I appreciate that.
Hi, yeah.
It's nice to be
Please.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. And if you guys have any other questions, just message us and we will definitely get back to you and see what we can answer for you.